an issue that I was just told a couple of hours ago that ACC wrote to my ACC advocate David Hepburn in relation to ongoing rehabilitation and discussing rehabilitation plan and all the rest of it. Now, I've been in ongoing conflict with the Auckland Regional Pain Clinic for the last 14 months and ACC in general, because ACC wants the Auckland Regional Pain Clinic to address the chronic pain and all the rest of it, which they claim that they can't deal with anything until they deal with all the mental and psychological issues involved in my case. Now here's the problem. The problem is that the mental and psychological issues caused to my life have been caused by criminal actions, abuse, threats, intimidation, violence, and malicious criminal prosecutions, and criminal blackmail, extortion, theft, robbery, pillaging, and plundering of all my rights and entitlements. Now, when someone tells you, like this morning David Hepburn told me, that Tipu Amir, forensic psychiatrist, who I met with previously, who didn't write up any of the facts or any of the truths previously to now, has avoided a meeting with me personally for the last 14 months. He has refused to, he doesn't want to sit down and discuss anything. He doesn't want to answer any questions. So he wants to do everything through written form and all the rest of it. So we made a recommendation to ACC because I wanted a forensic psychiatrist to actually write up all the facts of this case and to write up everything that Tipu Amir and Reese Tapsell and others in between who I had no involvement with, no knowledge of, or had anything discussed with me in relation to my rehabilitation. And because of that issue, Tipu Amir made the recommendation that a forensic psychiatrist should write up all the facts. The problem is that no forensic psychiatrist is going to slag off another forensic psychiatrist, as proven in this case. Everybody wants to run a mile from it. So Tipu has now come up with psychologists to deal with the mental and psychological issues that are involved in this case. Dealing with mental and psychological issues, I've done that before, and it's the biggest load of garbage you'll ever come across, because you've got people trying to convince you that you're the problem. I'm not the problem. The problem is that I can't deal with the mental and psychological issues and the abuse and the threats and the violence and the malicious criminal prosecutions while I'm under the controls of my abusers, my attackers, and my kidnappers. Right? Serial violators and fucking rapists. That's what they are. Now, you can go as far as you like to say that I'm not trying to help myself. I'll go to this BS system and I will demand that everything is video recorded, and I will demand that everything's written up the way it should be written up. But these psychologists won't write anything up because the onus is left on you, the victim, while the criminals, remain in place. While those implement a system that was taken out of the system in order to facilitate taking my life down this path. ACC works to frustrate, antagonize, torment, torture their victims. They harass, they slander, they label, they defame, they criminally harass. They call on all their departments, as proven in this case, to assist them in implementing all their negativity into their victims' lives. Now, I don't see anything coming. There's no clear direction of why a psychologist would be involved. There's no explanations. ACC has sent, according to the letter that I heard of this morning, ACC has sent a bunch of files to Tipu Amir. And he's written his letter in accordance with that. That's a load of bullshit, because those reports that he sent are under scrutiny already, because there's none of them correct, there's none of them factual, they're missing out on all the facts, they're missing out on all the details. So how can you send off reports when you weren't even given permission to do it? When the reports in question are already under scrutiny. But yet, the forensic psychiatrist, to avoid having to meet with me personally and have it all out on videotape, decides, get ACC to send him the forms. This was a discussion between him and ACC. ACC came up with a recommendation of psychologists, because this avoids having anything written up with facts and details and evidence of what is actually needed in this case. This is the further frustration that ACC wishes to cause me, because they want to criminally contain the situation. They do not want to compensate anybody any more than they have to. They do not want to take responsibility for the injuries they cause me. Post-traumatic stress, which they definitely cause me. I mean, see, I didn't sleep for years. It's like you're always on edge because you're being harassed and stalked and slandered and defamed every day. So you're always on the back foot. This is all part and parcel of their intimidation and their harassment and their criminal harassment. And they're saying, you're the problem. Me talking to a psychologist, that's fine. I'll talk to a psychologist when my life is out of harm's way. As stated in 2006, Jan White, ACC can never be involved in the management of your claim. My case went to a third party. My case was then taken back off a third party to facilitate the malicious criminal prosecutions. Since then, Scott Pickering came on board after that other idiot resigned because of all the rubbish that went on with the ACC and all the privacy breaches, which I was one of the people they breached their privacy. It's like, and I never ever got an apology for it. It was covered up as well, and nobody ever got compensated for the privacy breaches that took place. ACC basically swept it under the carpet, and the government assisted them in doing that. Because to get anything out of it, you'd have to take a public-private criminal prosecution, you'd have to spend a fortune, and you would end up spending more than you'd actually get from them. That is how corrupt this system is run. They don't apologize for anything, they break the law, and they never get held to account, or criminally to account for their actions. Now, this latest garbage of me seeing a psychologist to deal with the mental and psychological issues. Well, when a person deals with, let's say, a domestic violent relationship, they're taken out of the situation and they're given counselling. They don't have to go back into that situation. They're not forced to go back into that situation ever again. That's different with ACC because it's a Crown and government department. You're not taken out of the situation. You're basically told to accept, this is how it is, you don't have any rights, we own you. This is an act of war against you, Michael, and these animals remain in place while you have to deal with the mental and psychological abuse and the frustration and the antagonism and the torment and the torture of their criminality. That is the reality of what I face every day with ACC. Now they want some psychologist to basically fix everything. Well, a psychologist is not going to fix nothing. They haven't given any clear directions on what they're trying to achieve. I, on the other hand, want my life back to me owning it. I don't want it controlled by a bunch of vigilantes and state terrorists, serial violators and rapists, because that's all they are. I don't want my life driven down a path of psychiatrists and psychologists so that some corrupt criminals, lawyers, politicians can get away with murder, because that's what it's all about. So you end up with a psychologist and you end up with a psychiatrist covering up their corruption and criminality because they don't write it up in any way, shape or form. All they say is, I'm not a lawyer. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist either, but I know exactly what's right and what's wrong. I know exactly what's needed to restore my life to its former being, but I'm being denied it by these lunatics in positions of power. Jonathan Coleman, yet again, is another prime example of never addressing the facts of the issues. He's a bloody disgrace. I mean, I wouldn't even call him a human being. He's that low. But these people are just trying to frustrate me. This is all part and parcel of antagonism and torment. This is all about criminal containment of my life and criminally controlling the outcome. Right? They just want to frustrate me because they only wanted a point Z. I want point A to point Y addressed, like I said before. And that's how it should be addressed. Not these people in positions of power and Scott Pickering taking it from Queen's Counsel to a case manager and saying, address it. The case manager involved shouldn't even be involved. He's not even doing any work. He's the one who's getting a letter written for him by lawyers behind the scenes. And then he's sending that letter forward as if he's doing something. He's doing nothing. This is being controlled by lawyers. This is being controlled by Scott Pickering and the vigilantes in ACC. And this has all been covered up by forensic psychiatrists and the manipulation of forensic psychiatrists by ACC. So you as a victim have no chance. These people are criminally controlling the situation, taking a day at a time, day at a time, day at a time. None of this will come into fruition until January anyway. But in the interim, I'm just making it perfectly clear that what they're actually doing is not going to restore my life to its former being. It is not going to give me back control of my life, because these animals already have control of it. They took control of it 17 years ago and they haven't given it back to me yet. They don't want to give it back to me unless I walk away with nothing. They just want to continue on their criminal abuse, and they don't care if it ends up at point Z or if it doesn't end up at point Z. The point is, as long as they punish you, as long as they keep you under attack, as long as they wear you down mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, and financially, as long as they add to your trauma and keep adding to it until they break you, or you commit suicide, or they kill you. Whichever way it goes, or they put you in a mental asylum, or they put you in a prison. Everything in this organization is aimed at destroying your life. Everything is aimed at criminally covering up their crimes. Everything is aimed at putting you in a prison or a mental asylum, or trying to claim that you're criminally insane. I've proven beyond any reasonable doubt I'm the most sane person, and I was the most placid person on this planet. And I had to put up with all this abuse, threats, and violence, and no one helped me. No one. Now, you try living with that for 17 years, and then to be told by some forensic psychiatrist who has been paid by ACC to write up a fictitious report, yet again, with recommendations that deny me the right to have anything put on the table, because ACC does not want to address any facts of their criminality, their corruption, their abuse, their threats, their violence, their kidnapping, their criminal collaboration, their criminal conspiring, their extortion. It's just crime after crime after crime after crime after crime. If someone in society committed these crimes against another member of society, they would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. These people, because they're lawyers, commit their crimes behind their administrations, and then they want to claim that they're victims. New Zealanders, you need to wake up and realize that this is not just one victim here. There is a mountain of victims out there who probably have not suffered as much as I have. But I want to know exactly why all these forensic psychiatrists are being used to cover up the criminality of those in positions of power and those working within ACC. I want to know how anyone can counsel and help a victim when they're still under the controls of those who committed the crimes against them. And the overall responsibility in this case is an organization. The individuals don't get blamed for anything they do. But when it comes to responsibility, the organization wants to blame the individuals involved, and then remove the individuals, and then bring in other individuals to carry out the same crimes. But when it comes to accountability and justice, the organization wants to take responsibility for everything, and the individuals are free of any criminal liability. So you see, what you have is they're playing both sides of the fence here. Right? The organization and the individuals involved are collectively the criminals involved. And overall, the government is the criminals in this case, because they've allowed this to happen. The police who assisted these crimes are as guilty as sin. The commissioners who've covered up using privacy acts, using ombudsman's acts, using, parliamentary privileges even. These people want to cover up their crimes at all costs, at your expense. And I don't see how some psychologist is going to in any way resolve this case. I think Tipu Amir should not be a psychiatrist after what I've just seen. Because you don't make a recommendation, then go back on your recommendation to make another recommendation of a lesser caliber. Unless you're acting criminally on behalf of an ACC organization. Which means there's been a lot of discussion between ACC, Tipu Amir, and they've come up with this line of address to literally avoid addressing this case, or having anything written up to where they're going to have to deal with the overall criminality and corruption of those involved. This all started with Gerard McGreevy making a false declaration of my name, which led to alleging a brain injury, alleging a mental illness, alleging threats to kill. That is how this case started. And this is how this case has been driven. And I don't think anywhere in any of the reports are you going to see any of that evidence, because it's all been covered up by those involved. So, as far as I'm concerned, I have no control over it. I mean, they say they're going to make the recommendations and they're going to do this, that and the other. But a psychologist, unless it's all properly explained to me, is wasting my time yet again. This is all more evidence of criminal containment and not trying to restore my life to its former being. This is all aimed at covering up other people's crimes and getting away with murder, to be honest. So basically what my life is under ACC is a prisoner, a hostage and a captive, kidnapped, and basically they want to spoon feed me bullshit because they don't want to compensate anybody anything. And this is not about money. This is about restoring my life to its former being and having those responsible for the crimes they committed against me held criminally to account. I can't emphasize that anymore. Right? These people are the biggest criminal abusers on the planet, and they're lawyers because they know how to manipulate the law. And the government hides behind them, the lawyers hide behind themselves. The judges hide behind the lawyers even. Ombudsmen hide behind lawyers. It's like, I've come to realize that the rule of law in New Zealand is the actual crime. Because those who implement the law are the criminals, and they manipulate the law to suit themselves. They're nothing but criminals. And New Zealand is not a democracy. New Zealand is, they're taking away your rights every day, and they're getting away with murder because no one takes responsibility for their actions. Nobody has to take responsibility because somebody 50 years ago gave up their rights to sue, which enabled all this criminality to exist. Right, that's enough for the day, but that's only because I had to do this, and today's my birthday. Can you imagine that? On my birthday I have to put up with this bullshit. And I'm half drunk, by the way. But I still know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, there was other things I wanted to tell you, but I'll tell you some another time. Anyway, thank you. Just help me as much as you can.